Now, in the early 80s, the National Science Foundation began to fund supercomputer centers around the country. And in the mid to late 80s, they decided we want these supercomputers to be able to talk to each other. And what better network than the internet at that time?
NSF decided to do its own activity, and the NSF started out as a kind of an experimental 56 kilobit net, but then eventually they did a major solicitation for a 1.5 megabit NSF net, and the NSF net became a very big success.
So they began to beef up the backbone of the internet and took over some of the functionality. Now look what happened. Prior to that, computer scientists and certain government research agencies were the only people on the internet. As soon as the National Science Foundation came in, all scientists were allowed. Email began to leak out from the research group, and that's when the dot-coms began to come in toward the end of the 80s and the early 90s. The backbone network was there, but the interface was terrible. It was very clumsy to get onto the net. Just around that time, Tim Berners-Lee comes out with the World Wide Web.
We knew that was going to happen. Ted Nelson had been for years talking about this, and SRI had built that within their data center that we used right from the beginning to do all the documentation.
And I ran the Network Information Center on both the ARPANET and the Defense Data Network back in the 70s and 80s. We put out the directory, which was sort of the phone book of the internet. In the early days, nothing was online. There were no online documents, so it was a lot of hard copy. And we made a transition from providing information in hard copy to providing information online.
World Wide Web, which had been in existence for a number of years but wasn't really moving rapidly compared to some of the other alternatives, suddenly had this Mosaic browser that came out of the University of Illinois. We had played a role in helping to support some of that. Once the Mosaic browser was out there with connections to the web protocols, it became much easier for people to use it, and the web just went into overdrive at that point.
And now we had a very easy way for anyone to get onto the net. The backbone speed was there, the applications were there. Poof, it suddenly hit the public eye.
On NBC News, they said, we have a new way of you communicating with us.
No, a lot of people use it and communicate. I guess they can communicate with NBC writers and producers. Allison, can you explain what internet is?
And I said, oh my God, the mainstream media has adopted it.
That's when the public saw it. That's when it began to gain significant recognition across the world.